Good morning, students. In the last class, we began with Charles Lamb's essay, Dream Children a Reverie. We discussed the first part of the essay. So, basically, this is a reverie. I forgot to stress that point. It is a reverie. Reverie is actually a daydream or something like you dream. It is something known as a waking dream, a dream during the day. When you take a short nap after a meal in the afternoon, it is known as the dream you have is known as reverie. Or while even when you think about something, you daydream. This is known as reverie. So here he is daydreaming about an incident where he goes to all those past memories, the days he spent in Norfolk. And here he tells these stories of his childhood to his two children, Alice and John. And he starts this essay with this statement: children love to listen to stories. And here he begins the story with the mansion, with the description of the mansion in Norfolk. He says that it is 100 times bigger than this house. Right now they are residing in London City. So it is 100 times bigger than the house they are right now residing. Then he describes this house, the great hall with all those wooden carvings, the stories carved in those wooden panels. Mainly, he discusses the story of children in the wood and how these two children were killed by his cruel uncle. And the story goes on like these two children's bodies were buried by Robin Redbreast. Later, he discusses the character. He gives out a portrayal of Mrs. Field, who is his grandmother and great grandmother of these two children, Alice and John. And here he stresses the point that how good and religious this lady was. Though she was a mistress of the house, she was so graceful. She had so much dignity. She earned respect from from her neighborhood. She kept this house so nicely that people thought she was the real owner of the house. And also, he describes all those foolish acts of the real owner of this house, how he pulled down all those ornaments from this beautiful house and he took it to his modern house, and how awkward it looked. There is this comparison of carrying out all those tombs from Westminster Abbey to the to an imaginary character Lady C. How all these tombs look when it is kept in Lady C's tawdry, ugly-looking drawing room. And then there is this description of Mrs. Field's funeral, how it was attended by all those classes alike, be it poor or gentry. Everybody attended the funeral of Mrs. Field. That showed her acceptance in the society, how she gained respect in the society, though she was only a housekeeper of Norfolk. Then he talks about how she remembers all those prayers by heart. Then he talks about how good dancer she was. We stopped there. And along with these descriptions, what makes this essay special is he's narrating the stories to these two children, and we get this immediate reactions from these children, and that makes this essay unique. It is not just recounting of his past memories, he is presenting it as a narration, as a story to his own children, and he mingles, he blends this essay with all those reactions of these children, which make this essay most touching. In this class, we will continue. Here, as I said earlier, he is stressing on this point that Mrs. Field is a good and religious lady. She was a good dancer, but she contracted this deadly disease, cancer, but it couldn't bend her spirits because he again stresses she was so good and religious. And again, he continues. In this lecture, I'll be starting from this line. Then I told her how she was used to sleep by herself in the lawn chamber of the great lone house. So please start reading from that part. So in this great house, she was the mistress of this house, and she was alone there. Imagine an old lady living alone in this great house, a great mansion. And she used to say that she used to see the apparition, ghost of two children, maybe those two children in the wood. She used to say that she saw all these apparitions of these two children at midnight gliding up and down the great staircase where she slept. But she used to say this, that these innocents would do her no harm. She was never afraid of seeing these apparitions. As I said earlier, she was a very religious lady. That is why these apparitions didn't create any fear in this lady. And here again, he continues, how frightened I used to be in those days. I had my mind to sleep with me because I was never half so good or religious as she. So, the author Charles Lamb used to sleep in this great mansion, and he was so frightened. He was so afraid to sleep alone. And he gives out the same reason. He says that I was not so good or religious like my grandmother. That was why I felt so frightened imagining these apparitions. Here again, we get the reaction of one of these children, that is John. John expands all his eyebrows and tried to look courageous. As I said earlier, both these children wanted to show that they inherited all those good qualities of their grandmother. We saw Alice involuntarily moving her legs when Charles Lamb said that her grandmother, great grandmother, was a great dancer. They wanted to prove that they inherited all those good traits of their grandmother. So here, John also displays courage, the courage their great grandmother had. He expands all his eyebrows and tried to look courageous. And he continues, he says, I told them how good she was to all her grandchildren. She never had any kind of bias or partiality. Every grandchildren, they were treated alike. And they spent their vacations there in that great house. And from there on, Charles Lamb discusses his vacation in Norfolk, his holidays in Norfolk, and particularly he talks about how he spent his time there. There were a lot of cousins residing together, come together in this house during vacation. But here he presents his perspective. What did he do? What did he indulge himself? How did he indulge himself in all those leisurely activities? What were his leisurely activities? He says that he used to spend many hours by himself and mainly looking, staring at, gazing upon the old bust of 12 Caesars that had been the emperors of Rome, till the old marble heads would seem to live again, or I to be turned into marble with them. So he spent many hours looking at the old statues of these 12 Caesars, which is kept there at the staircase. And he gazed upon these 12 Caesars till the point where he felt like he became one of them, or vice versa. He felt like these 12 Caesars becoming live again. നമ്മൾ ഏതെങ്കിലും ഒരു കാര്യത്തിലേക്ക് കുറച്ച് നേരം ഇങ്ങനെ കണ്ണ് വെട്ടാതെ നോക്കിയിരുന്നു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ അതിനകത്ത് കുറച്ച് കഴിയുമ്പോഴേക്കും വി ഗെറ്റ് എ ഫീലിംഗ് ദാറ്റ് ദീസ് ഇമേജസ് ആർ മൂവിങ്. അവിടെയും അത് തന്നെയാണ്. ഹി ഫെൽറ്റ് ലൈക്ക് ദീസ് statues are coming back to life, or vice versa, he will think that he imagines that he became one of them. So he used to spend a lot of time looking at, staring at these old bust of 12 Caesars, and he was never tired of roaming around this huge mansion with all those vast empty rooms, which is decorated by all those hangings which were worn out already. They have all these fluttering tapestries, carved oaken panels. And after that, he spent his time in all those spacious old-fashioned gardens. It was only visited by a solitary gardening man once or twice. Other than him, only Charles Lamb was there. He looked at all those nectarines, all those peaches, and he never felt like plucking them, as he knew that it was something like forbidden fruit. Maybe their grandmother had made this or prevented them from plucking these fruits. So he never felt the need to pluck these fruits, all those nectarines, all those peaches. And he felt so happy, he found more pleasure in roaming around that garden, seeing all those old melancholy looking yew trees. Yew trees, they have a sad looking feature. It has all those drooping leaves. So it is always said that it is melancholic yew trees. You saw this image, the melancholic image of yew tree in one of those poems you studied in first semester, that is elegy written in a country churchyard. It also discusses this sad looking yew trees which is there in the cemetery. He found more pleasure in strolling around this garden which had all these melancholy looking new trees first and picking up all those red berries, all those apples, fir apples. And he slept there. He lay down on those fresh grass with, with all those fresh garden smells, basking in all those orange gardens. And he used to move around those fish ponds. He saw a great sulky pike. Pike is a fish moving through this water. It looked so sulky, looked so lazy. So he equates his mood with the mood of pikes, of fishes. It is something known as busy idle diversions. He says that he found more pleasure in these busy idle diversions. It is something like busy idle is something like an oxymoron. Two opposites, busy and lazy. He was busy with all those lazy diversions he had in this house, inside the house and outside the house. That is, all those gardens and inside all those vast empty rooms. He says, I had more pleasure in these busy idle diversions than in all those sweet flavors of peaches, nectarines, and oranges and such like common baits of children. Usually children spend their time in garden and they go through these garden plucking all these things. He says that I found more pleasure in just strolling around, watching all these trees, watching the fishes in the pond, etc. Here again he gets the reaction of John. John slyly deposited back upon the plate a bunch of grapes, which, not unobserved by Alice, he had meditated dividing with her, and both seemed willing to relinquish them for the past as irrelevant. So that is actually a naughty thing. This John does. John takes a bunch of grapes and he was about to eat that. That is when he heard the act of his father, where his father found more pleasure in busy idle diversions rather than picking out all those fruits. Here, John wanted to be like his father. That is why he deposited back this fruit, and Alice too wanted to have a share of this grapes. It is said that not unobserved by Alice. It is two opposite, not unobserved. It is actually observed by Alice. ഈ ജോൺ പതുക്കെ ഈ പ്ലേറ്റിൽ നിന്ന് ഗ്രേപ്സ് എടുക്കുന്നത് ആലിസും കണ്ടിരുന്നു. ആൻഡ് അവർ കണ്ണുകൊണ്ട് അങ്ങോട്ടും ഇങ്ങോട്ടും വി വിൽ ഷെയർ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിരുന്നു. പക്ഷേ വെൻ ദേ ഹേർഡ് അബൌട്ട് ദി ക്വാളിറ്റി ഓഫ് ദെയർ ഫാദർ, ദേ തോട്ട് ടു റിട്രാക്ട്. അത് തിരിച്ചു വെച്ചേക്കാം, അങ്ങനെ ചെയ്യരുത്, ഞങ്ങളുടെ അച്ഛൻ ഇങ്ങനെയായിരുന്നില്ല എന്നുള്ളൊരു തോന്നലിൽ ദേ wanted to they deposited it back. They were willing to relinquish, to give up, because they wanted to look like their father. They wanted to imitate their father's good qualities. Here end the description of the mansion. In this lecture, we were mainly talking about the holidays he spent in Norfolk. There is this description of this house, garden, and how he used to spend his leisurely time there. Also, we get the reaction of mainly the reaction of John in this narration. I have start from this line as I told earlier. Then I told how she was used to sleep by herself in a lone chamber of the great lone house. And I stopped here. He had meditated dividing with her, and both seemed willing to relinquish them for the past as irrelevant. In the next class, there is the next description of his brother, John. We will start with the character description of John in the next class. Hope it is clear. Thank you, girls. Have a nice day.